how do you think we'll define what it means to be a human in 50 years? Do you think we're just gonna have we're gonna have a cultural redefinition of humanity at some point?
We already have.
Yeah.
Probably the most radical redefinition of humanity was the hard scientific worldview that excludes religious perspectives.
Right.
A lot of science, a lot of religious people just take the facts of science and use that to grow their own religious worldview. But obviously, atheism in many, if not most, elite circles has won the day, and more so in the populace. And so now, instead of having a created humanity in the image of God, or kind of emanated humanity in the case of the Neoplatonists, or also a kind of emanated humanity in the Hindus, or whatever, just pick a religious system. Instead, we're just naked we're naked apes.
Right.
And that is a radical redefinition of what a human being is, just this material organism with a big brain and the ability to create tools.
Yep.
And when that is completely severed from religion, which in many cultures and most elite cultures it seems to have been severed, then from there it's just transhumanism is just kind of an elaboration on it. But again, there's so many different forms of transhumanism. I don't mean to say all transhumanists believe this, but I do mean to say for sure that it is a prominent thread. Kurzweil being one, many others, and so now finding ourselves in this, just take the atheistic transhuman point of view, finding ourselves as naked apes who organize like ants and are creating these technological systems. We are now at a place in their point of view where we can begin to create what religions have said have always existed. We will now create a God that never existed. We will create heavens that never were. And we'll use our technology to either create a God that we will kneel down to, or in the more hubristic sorts of ideas like Max Moore, that we will make ourselves gods.
Right. I mean, there's a reason Apple has an apple with a bite out of it, right?
Yeah, there's an interesting story. When I was in Prague in 2015, it must have been, or 14, I went to the Apple Museum there, and on the front glass there was a decal that said, 3 apples changed the world. The first was handed to Adam by Eve. The second landed on Newton's head. Wow. And the third was handed half-eaten to the world by Steve Jobs.
There you go. Wow. Yeah, well, that makes sense. And there's no going back. There's no one going back. It's just a constant falling for man with all this stuff. But it's hard because I love technology. As much as I joke about being a Luddite, here we are. Talking from different states over microphones and a computer. So as much as I joke about rejecting it all, I love it. But I do worry about the future my kids are going to inherit, where they're going to face Neuralink popularity. The AI, I mean, right now, if I opt out of AI, like I don't use it, I don't use Grok, I never use it, but I think we're all participating in it on Twitter, at least, because, and on Google, everywhere, because it's eating us, right? It's eating everything we do, putting it into its database, and then spitting it out for some, who knows where, that some idea you had is now in part of a bigger conglomerate that someone used to make a picture of Donald Trump or something. So it's like it's impossible to escape, even when you think you're not participating.
Man, it's from that perspective, in the sense that it ain't going away, it's only becoming more intrusive. It's pretty grim, but ultimately, I mean, I always try to keep it in perspective that there have been so many different periods in which humans have faced horrific scenarios. Totally. The Huns, the Black Plague, so on and so forth. Just World War I and II, on and on and on. Like, if the atheists are correct, then it doesn't really matter, because we're just going to blink out. So it doesn't matter. It's all as if it was nothing. Right. I don't believe the atheists are correct, though.
Yeah, me neither.
I believe there's much more to humanity than anything that technology can improve. It really, the deepest core, can even affect. And so if we have faith in God, whatever form it is it takes in one's mind, and if we do believe in a soul that persists and is above and beyond everything here in the material, then ultimately, no matter how weird and uncomfortable or even violent and nightmarish it gets, in the end, that's the ground of being that we're standing on. And so it's easy to say right now, it's pretty comfortable here. Everything's pretty all right. But I think that has to be the attitude that religious people take, anyone with any spiritual impulse at all. And if you don't have a spiritual impulse, if you believe that all of this is just atoms in the void and it's all just dirt, we're just rad dirt, well, then ultimately none of this matters anyway. Anything could happen. It wouldn't matter, because as soon as you die, it's as if nothing happened. And once the universe cools down or recollapses, it will be as if absolutely none of it happened. So, either way, I'm very hopeful.
That's beautiful. I love that. We have a little bit of time left, and I really wanted to hear your thoughts, as I know you mentioned it to me the other day. What you've been thinking about with Aleister Crowley lately?
It's not lately so much, but I touch on it in the book, and it's something that I've actually been going back into just a little bit. Here's the thing about Aleister Crowley that I think is really interesting. There's a great video series called Hell's Bells. God, I should have it right on the tip of my tongue, but it was done by these like fundamentalist Christians, and it kind of has that corny fundamentalist Christian feel. But I've never seen anything more brilliant in regard to Crowley.
Okay.
Basically, they just go through all of the pop culture up to that point, and from Madonna to Marilyn Manson to AC/DC, whatever, and they show how the ethos of Aleister Crowley, this idea of the age of the child, is completely suffused into the culture of rock and roll. And for anyone who may not be familiar with Crowley or Crowley, I never can.
Me neither. I go back and forth.
But you're talking about a black magician of the late 1800s, early 1900s, very famous, very much looked to by rock stars as an inspiration. Jimmy Page is among the most famous, Marilyn Manson and Danny Carey of Tool being others. But, it really, already you have just this direct link into rock and roll. And the author, Gary Lackman, in his book, Turn Off Your Mind, probably does the best job of showing the direct lineage of Aleister Crowley to the Beatles and then Charles Manson. But this idea that Crowley had was, I believe it was 1904. If I recall correctly, he's in Egypt, and this being, Iowas, comes to his wife first and then to him, and he writes automatically these 3 sections to what he called the Book of the Law. And maybe he's just bullshitting, who knows. I once stayed on with a cult in Florida, and their cult leader said that Aleister Crowley was more showman than shaman. And I think that there may be something to that. But
it's a jealous cult leader.
This idea, though, I think is valid. Let's just say, whether it was actual mystical channeling of these forces or whether it was just really prescient art, his idea was that we're moving from the age of the father into the age of the child, the crowned and conquering child, which he identified with Horus in the Egyptian mythology. And the idea would be that the old ethic of the law, the patriarchal law, would be shattered, and that the new eon of humanity would be the age of the child, the crowned and conquering child, where love is the law, love under will. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Meaning, basically, all other standards of morals and ethics and conduct are now just going to be little man babies running around doing whatever they want. And if you look at culture for the last, really, for centuries, preceding Crowley, but especially now, it is the culture of, we are in the age of the child, the aeon of the man baby. And
they're everywhere.
I think that he is horrible. And I mean, the dude wrote poetry about eating doo-doo. You know what I mean? Like, there's things wrong with him, real bad.
Definitely things wrong with him.
He had an enormous impact, and I think that kind of mysticism, you see it in Timothy Leary, a direct reference to Crowley. At one point, he thought he was the reincarnation of Crowley. You see it suffusing the culture. It gives a dark air, a really dark air to pop culture and American culture in general.
Yeah. When that, in 1904, was that what they call like the demon that he was talking to? Or people refer to, I don't know if he referred to it as a demon, but he like drew it to, it looks like a gray alien almost, if you see sketches.
Oh no, that was later. It was
Okay.
the date escapes me, but much later. That was in New York,
Okay.
reportedly under the influence of mescaline,
Okay.
and he drew Lamb, which is that egg-headed
Yes.
gray alien, and he drew a gray alien basically before gray aliens were cool.
Right. Yeah. That was crazy. And that was in early April. And I was thinking about that this year just because whatever day that was in April when he talked to that alien or demon, this year on that day in April is when NASA launched the rockets into the sky during the solar eclipse. And people are like, "Oh my goodness, it's all aligning. It's chaos." And they called it the god of chaos. It was Apopos. I forgot how you say it, but that's what NASA called it. I'm like, "Oh geez, what are they signaling to Crowley?"
You know, there's a deep connection between occultism and the NASA and the space program in general.
Oh yeah,
and also in Russia. With the cosmist movement, which is in many ways, many transhumanists trace their spiritual foundation to the Russian cosmists, and they basically, it was a 20th century school of thought that believed that again humans would realize the dreams of religion in a material form, and a big part of that would be resurrecting the dead.
They definitely tried.
Already being done with AI,
Yep.
right? Like taking people's data and resurrecting them and creating these zombie personas.
Yep.
But then another huge element of cosmism, hence the term cosmist, was space exploration, and it was a deep influence on Russia's space program. And then, according to Douglas Rushkoff, that's where I've read it anyway. That they met with what would become the kind of transhumanists in Silicon Valley in I believe the late 70s, maybe early 80s, and that really sparked off what we now see as kind of the transhuman culture coming out of Mondo 2000 and all that. So the desire to go to space, to conquer space. There is the biblical version of it, right?
With Babel.
The Masonic version of it. But then there's also I would say some darker threads. Jack Parsons with the Jet Propulsion's laboratory in California,
Yep.
Partnering with L. Ron Hubbard to create basically the Antichrist, to give birth to the Antichrist. And he blows himself up reportedly
Right.
in his own laboratory. And L. Ron Hubbard goes on to found a religion that holds that we came from space.
Yep.
Space is again our destiny. So yeah, it's Shane, man. It's just gonna get weirder and weirder and weirder, and even the Amish are gonna have to notice how weird it's getting.
I know. I love it. Man, I always love talking to you, Joe. I really appreciate it. We'll have to have you back on to report on the dystopia as it continues to grow. Where can people find you, find your book, and all that good stuff?
You can find my writings at joebot.xyz, JOEBOTXYZ. You can get signed copies of the book there, or go to Dark Aeon, that's AEON, darkaeon.xyz, and I have signed copies there. Go into basically most of what we've discussed up till
I gotta show it to
summer
people.
of 2023.
Here you go, right here. The link is also in the video right now for those that you should pick it up, because I think this is the conversation everyone should be having moving forward. If you're not aware of all this stuff, it's really important. So, Joe, I appreciate it, and we'll talk soon, man.
Nanu.
Later, dude.